He was a lonely realtor sent to evaluate a forgotten house deep in the Marsh, a place locals whispered about, abandoned, rotting, and left for dead. Reed Lawson thought it was just another failed listing, until his loyal German shepherd uncovered a hidden tunnel beneath the kitchen floor. What they found below wasn't treasure, but a missing woman thought dead for nearly 3 decades. Still alive, still hiding, still praying for rescue. What began as a routine inspection became a story of courage, redemption, and the quiet miracle that can rise from the darkest places. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and may God bless everyone watching. Gray light hung low over Hollow Reed Marsh, the morning mist drifting like slow-moving ghosts across the wetlands, as Reed Lawson guided his truck toward the old wooden house, crouched at the edge of the reeds. He paused at the steering wheel for a long breath, studying the property with the steady gaze of a man who had learned, through heartbreak, through decades of selling homes for families he would never belong to, that life often hid its sharpest truths behind the most ordinary doors. Reed, 60 years old, tall and lean, with a weather-worn face, silver-flecked beard, and eyes a pale blue like chilled steel, carried himself with the quiet resilience of someone who had rebuilt himself more than once. His divorce 2 years earlier had hollowed out a soft, tender part inside him, leaving him slower to trust, quicker to retreat, and yet forever drawn toward places that needed mending. Perhaps that was why he'd accepted this listing, the house everyone else refused to touch. Beside him in the passenger seat sat Duke, a 6-year-old German shepherd with black and tan fur, a powerful frame, and intelligent amber eyes that always seemed to see more than any human could. Duke had been with Reed since the worst year of his life, the year the marriage ended and the house fell silent, and the dog's calm, loyal presence had stitched closed wounds Reed hadn't known how to treat. Duke was cautious, alert, and fiercely protective, a dog shaped by years of training and the intuition of an animal who understood human sorrow better than most people. Reed stepped out of the truck, boots crunching on gravel, and surveyed the house. It was small, leaning slightly to one side as if bowing under the weight of its own history. The wood siding, once white, had faded to a weary yellow-gray, and the porch sagged like an elderly spine. The marsh whispered behind it, reeds swaying in the faint breeze, and somewhere in the wet distance, a lone heron cried. "This old place has stories," Reed murmured, half to himself, half to Duke. "Let's hope none of them bite." Duke didn't answer with a bark, but with a low, thoughtful rumble in his chest, as he studied the back wall of the house with a seriousness that made Reed pause. Inside, the air felt thick, old wood, damp earth, and something unnameable that clung to the corners like forgotten sighs. Reed clicked on his flashlight and moved room by room, mentally assessing costs. A cracked window, warped floorboards, peeling wallpaper with a floral pattern that once held someone's dreams. Not impossible, he thought. Unfortunate, but not impossible. He knelt beside the fireplace, brushing away soot absent-mindedly while his thoughts drifted to the life he once imagined. Grandchildren visiting, laughter in the kitchen, anniversaries celebrated with the same woman he had vowed to grow old with. But life had shifted under him like soft mud, and now he lived in a small rental with Duke, selling homes to strangers, who reminded him of all the chapters he'd never get back. A sudden growl snapped him from his thoughts. Duke stood rigid, head lowered, eyes fixed on the far wall of the living room, the one facing the marsh. Reed followed the line of Duke's stare, seeing nothing but old paneling, warped slightly near the base. "What is it, boy?" Duke stepped forward slowly, hackles rising, nose quivering as he sniffed along the wood grain. The growl deepened, not loud but tense, an instinctive warning. Reed touched the wall, pressing a palm against the boards. Cold. Too cold, he thought, as if something chilled the air behind it. A draft? A gap in the insulation? It must have been something simple, something normal. But Duke didn't move, didn't relax, didn't blink. His posture said danger, not curiosity. Before Reed could investigate further, footsteps crunched on gravel outside. A soft voice called, "You're the new realtor, aren't you?" Reed straightened and stepped onto the porch, finding a woman standing by the broken fence. She was in her early 60s, perhaps 63, carrying herself with the careful grace of someone who had known both love and long sorrow. She was small and slender, with wavy gray hair pulled back loosely, a warm brown complexion lined gently by time, and calm hazel eyes that looked like they had memorized every secret the town whispered. She wore a thick cardigan over a faded dress and clutched a basket of apples as if it served as both offering and shield. "I'm Reed Lawson," he said, offering a polite smile. "And you are?" "Helen Brooks," she replied, her voice low and slightly hoarse, the way voices get after years of speaking softly into empty rooms. "I live next door, though next door is half a mile away out here." Reed nodded. "Nice to meet you. I'm just assessing the property." Helen's gaze drifted to the house, and her expression shifted, tightened, like she was remembering something she wasn't sure she wanted to recall. "This place," she hesitated. "People talk, you know. They always do." Reed gave a half laugh. "Every town has its ghost story." "It's not ghosts I'm warning you about," she said quietly. "It's what the last owners left behind." He waited for her to elaborate, but she only glanced toward the marsh with a shiver she tried to hide. Duke stepped between Reed and Helen, not aggressively but protectively, as if reading tension in her voice Reed had missed. She looked down at the dog, something softening in her eyes. "That one's sharp," she said. "Animals always know first." Reed tried to dismiss the unease creeping up his spine. "Is there something specific I should know?" Helen shook her head slowly, as though weighing the burden of truth. "Just be careful, that's all." She forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and lifted her basket. "I brought you these. Welcome to Hollow Reed Marsh." Before Reed could respond, a sharp crack echoed from inside the house. Wood snapping, something shifting. Duke whirled and sprinted through the doorway, barking for the first time all morning, loud and urgent. Reed followed, heartbeat quickening. The living room was unchanged, silent, empty. But the wall, that cold wall, now showed a thin vertical fissure down its center, as if something behind it had pushed outward. Reed bent forward, brushing away dust from the crack, but before he could examine it fully, Duke emitted a low growl, deeper than before, staring at the gap with eyes wide and unblinking. Helen stepped inside behind them, hands trembling as she clutched the doorframe. "That wasn't like that yesterday," she whispered. "I walk past this place every morning." Reed touched the crack again. This time, it felt warmer, almost pulsing. He told himself it was simply moisture expanding the wood. He told himself Duke was reacting to the smell of an animal nest. He told himself Helen's fear was inherited superstition. But even as he told himself these things, something in his chest tightened, a quiet, unmistakable instinct whispering that the house was hiding something, something waiting, something that had been buried long before he arrived. And as Reed leaned closer to the fissure, Duke suddenly backed away, tail stiff, eyes fixed on the wall, as if something behind it had just moved. The warmth beneath Reed's fingertips grew hotter. Then, from inside the wall, something tapped back. The night settled over Hollow Reed Marsh with a dense, breathless stillness. The somebody souls, as if the reeds themselves held their tongues. Reed Lawson stood in the center of the dim living room, the thin crack in the wall still lingering in his mind like a whispered dare. But he tried to push it aside. He had a job to do, a house to assess, a future to rebuild, piece by small, stubborn piece. Duke paced beside him, ears flicking at every faint shift of the old house, his tail stiff, his frame alert. The dog had not calmed since the sound inside the wall earlier. Reed knelt, placing a steadying hand on Duke's shoulder. "Easy, boy. Nothing's getting through that wall." But Duke didn't believe him, and truthfully, Reed wasn't sure he believed himself either. The hours stretched. Reed worked through the evening, reviewing structural notes, cleaning debris, and sorting through a rusted box of old nails in the kitchen. Around 9, he rolled out a sleeping bag in the living room. He wasn't planning to stay the night initially, but something in his gut insisted he shouldn't leave the house unattended. Duke curled beside him, head resting over Reed's foot like a sentry. Near midnight, the temperature dropped abruptly. The air grew dense, colder than the night outside, and Reed opened his eyes without knowing why. That was when he heard it, a thin, tremulous sound drifting down from above. A child's cry, soft, broken, as if someone far away was sobbing into cupped hands. Reed sat up. "You hear that?" Duke was already standing, body rigid, fur lifted along his spine. The cry came again, slightly louder, followed by a faint dragging sound, then silence. Duke barked, sharp and urgent, and bolted toward the staircase, planting himself in front of it with a growl so deep it vibrated through the floor. Reed grabbed his flashlight and climbed carefully. Duke followed, but kept nudging Reed's leg, as if urging him to turn back. "We're fine," Reed whispered, though his voice betrayed doubt. At the attic door, he paused. The old brass doorknob was cold, colder than the air around it. When he pushed the door open, dust swirled like ghostly confetti in the flashlight beam. The attic held nothing but broken chairs, a warped crib, some boxes, and the stale smell of time. No window, no movement, no child. Reed exhaled shakily, sweeping the light across the room, until it hit something small and wooden, tucked behind the crib, a box. He crouched, brushing off a thick blanket of dust, revealing a small wooden chest with delicate carvings across the lid. The hinges creaked when he opened it. Inside lay a neatly folded letter. The paper yellowed and curled at the edges. The handwriting was delicate, slanted slightly to the right, as if written by someone constantly glancing over their shoulder. Dear Anna, if you find this, it means I've waited too long. There are noises every night, footsteps below the floor, whispers near the walls, and objects moving, when I'm sure I left them untouched. But the worst is what my son keeps saying. He sees a man with a yellow lantern under the floorboards, and each night, the man gets closer. I think someone is living beneath this house. Please, send help. Emily Carter. Reed felt a chill sink into his bones. He read the letter twice, then a third time. Emily Carter, the missing mother from the family who abandoned the house years earlier. He knew the name, vaguely, from local gossip. A woman who vanished with her husband and child, leaving behind rumors but never evidence. He swallowed. Something rustled behind him. Only Duke. The dog had his nose pressed into a corner of the attic, sniffing intensely. When Reed approached, he saw old toys scattered, a wooden truck, a doll missing an arm, a tiny sweater folded neatly, as if waiting for a child to return. Reed touched the sweater. It was strangely warm. He jerked his hand back. Not possible, he muttered, but the doubt inside him split open like the crack in the living room wall. By morning, heavy clouds pressed low over the marsh. Reed took the letter to Helen Brooks. She opened the door wearing thick wool socks and a sage green cardigan, her gray hair loosely tied. Her face, usually composed, tightened the moment she saw the paper in Reed's hand. Emily Carter, she said quietly, motioning him inside. Her home was cozy, crocheted blankets, shelves of old books, the faint smell of cinnamon tea. Yet, Reed felt tension coil through the room as if he'd brought in a storm. He handed her the letter. She read slowly, lips tightening, eyes clouding with the weight of old knowledge. You know something, Reed said. Helen sat down, folding her hands. She looked smaller than yesterday, as if carrying a truth long hidden. When the Carter family disappeared, people assumed ghosts, curses, whatever they could imagine. But I lived here long before that family moved in. I heard things, saw things. Reed leaned forward. What kind of things? Helen hesitated, but the truth pushed through. There was a man, a drifter named Miles Dutton, tall, broad-shouldered, always wearing a battered oilskin coat, with a heavy beard gone gray too young. He had sharp, restless eyes, always scanning, always calculating. He'd been involved in some trouble upstate, violent trouble. Reed frowned. Criminal? Helen nodded. Rumors said he killed someone. Others said it was an accident. Either way, he fled. He hid around the marsh for months. People saw him carrying tools, shovels, pickaxes, heard digging late at night. No one dared confront him. Eventually, the police started searching. He vanished. Vanished how? Reed asked. Some believed he drowned in the marsh. Some believed he fled town. But she swallowed. I think he dug himself a place to hide, a place underground. Reed felt his pulse spike. You think he was living under this house? Helen looked toward the fog, curling outside her window, her voice barely audible. People said they heard him, scraping, knocking, lantern light flickering from the floorboards. And the Carter boy. He told his mother about a man under the house before they left. Reed exhaled slowly. And nobody checked? Helen shook her head. By the time anyone wanted to, the family was gone. Reed turned the letter over, tracing the faded ink. Something about Emily's words felt raw, authentic, terrified yet deliberate. He couldn't ignore it. The tapping in the wall last night hadn't been the house settling. He knew that now. Duke whined softly beside him, nudging Reed as if urging him back to safety, away from truths that should remain buried. Reed scratched Duke's head, grateful for the grounding presence. I need to check the attic again, Reed said. There's something up there, something Emily wanted someone to find. Helen gripped his arm, her thin fingers cold. Be careful, Reed. Whatever lived under that house may not be gone. He tried to offer a brave smile, but it faltered. As he stepped off her porch, the wind carried through the marsh reeds a faint, almost melodic hum, soft, tremulous, eerily similar to the cry he'd heard last night. Reed froze. Duke growled. The sound came again. A child's sob, then a whisper, then silence. Rain hammered the marshland with relentless force, drumming on the sagging roof of the old house as Reed Lawson knelt on the kitchen floor, fitting new hinges on a creaking cabinet door. The storm outside felt strange, too sudden, too heavy, almost as if hollow Reed Marsh was trying to warn him away. Yet he kept working, driven by the familiar blend of determination and quiet loneliness that had shaped most of his life. Duke moved restlessly behind him, the German shepherd's nails tapping across the warped linoleum. The dog was unusually persistent today, circling the same section of floorboards with a focus Reed had only seen during search and rescue drills years ago. Duke's thick black and tan coat bristled, his intelligent amber eyes scanning the corners as though expecting something to crawl out of the shadows. Reed glanced back. What is it now? Another squirrel? But Duke wasn't playing. He crouched low, nose pressed against a particular board near the base of the old pantry. A deep growl rippled through his chest. Then he began scratching, slow at first, then faster, claws raking the wood with frantic urgency. Splinters flew. Reed hurried over. Whoa, hey, stop, you're going to break your paws. But Duke barked sharply, a sound edged with fear and insistence. Rain boomed louder above them, the windows rattling. Something about Duke's instincts, always sharper than Reed's doubts, shifted the air. Reed grabbed a pry bar from his toolbox. All right, let's see what you've found. He wedged the metal beneath the board. It resisted. Then it snapped upward with a violent crack. A cold draft rushed from the dark slit beneath the floor, carrying with it the musty scent of soil, damp wood, and something older, something human. Reed widened the opening, lifting away the warped boards until a black void yawned open. A tunnel, small but unmistakably carved by human hands, reinforced with planks, hidden for years. Duke whined softly, then nudged Reed toward it. You've got to be kidding me, Reed murmured. The tunnel sloped downward, narrow but big enough for a grown adult to crawl through. The beam of Reed's flashlight disappeared into the depths like a swallowed breath. He inhaled deeply, tasting fear and cold air. Come on, boy. Stay close. Duke slipped in first, tail low but steady. Reed crawled behind him, elbows scraping dirt, heart pounding in his ears. The wooden walls creaked around them. The rain above felt impossibly far away. After several minutes, the cramped tunnel field expanded. Reed lifted himself to his hands and knees, then onto his feet as the space opened into a small underground chamber, a hidden room carved beneath the marsh's edge. The flashlight revealed astonishing details: a metal kettle rusting atop a makeshift stove made of bricks, wool blankets folded in a corner, a pile of canned food long expired, and a narrow table stacked with papers. But it was what lay neatly arranged in the center of the room that made Reed's breath catch. A journal, its leather cover cracked, pages swollen from moisture, but unmistakably intact. Reed lifted it gently. Handwriting, slanted, frightened, familiar from the attic letter, covered the first page. Emily Carter. Duke sniffed the air, pacing the perimeter of the room, occasionally letting out a soft whine. Reed opened the journal. The first entry was dated 95, the year the Carter family disappeared. I can't leave, not while he's out there. The man with the yellow lantern waits by the marsh at night. He circles the house. He knows my son saw him. Reed felt his jaw tighten. He turned the page. More entries followed, some hurried, some shaking with fear. He scratched at the floorboards again. I heard his shovel, always digging. And then, shockingly, entries dated 2018, 23 years after Emily was believed dead. I don't know if anyone comes looking anymore. I hope my son is safe. I hope he forgives me for leaving. But as long as he searches for us, the man with the lantern will watch him. I stay for him, only for him. Reed stared at the dates. 23 years. She had lived here, alone, underground, hidden. Emily didn't run, Reed whispered. She stayed to protect her child. Duke barked sharply in agreement, as if the truth itself unsettled him. Reed continued reading. The last entry, smeared by damp, was dated late 2018. The tunnels are no longer safe. He's moving again. I hear him closer every night. If I don't write again, it means he has found me. Reed swallowed hard. The air in the underground room suddenly felt too thick, too cold, as though the shadows were listening. Duke stiffened, ears pricked toward a far wall where the wooden support beams bowed inward. Reed aimed the flashlight. There, a small jagged hole burrowed deeper into darkness, dirt scattered freshly around it, as if someone, or something, had crawled through not long ago. Reed stepped closer, then stopped. A faint smell drifted from the hole, sweat, metal, and a musky earthiness that didn't belong to the marsh. He stepped backward. Duke growled low. The room seemed to pulse. Reed realized Emily may not have died here. She may have left, or escaped, or been chased out. And if she survived until 2018, she might still be alive now. Goosebumps crawled up his arms. His mind churned through possibilities, dangerous, impossible, hopeful. But then something happened that froze him. The hole in the far wall released a draft of icy air, and in that cold breeze came a faint, unmistakable sound. A wheezing breath, not his. Reed grabbed Duke's collar. "We're leaving, now!" Duke didn't need convincing. They crawled back through the tunnel, the walls groaning as if urged alive by the storm above. When they burst into the kitchen, rainwater dripped through a crack in the ceiling, thunder shaking the rotten beams. Reed slammed the boards back, over the opening, chest heaving. Duke pressed against his leg, trembling. Reed looked toward the marsh through the window. Lightning split the sky. For a moment, just a heartbeat, Reed could have sworn a dim, yellow glow flickered among the reeds. Then it vanished. He steadied himself, gripping the counter. "Emily might be alive," he whispered. But as another growl of thunder rolled across Hollow Reed Marsh, Reed understood something else, something far darker. If Emily was alive, then whoever she feared might be alive too, and he might still be watching. Night pressed heavily against Hollow Reed Marsh, a thick velvet darkness broken only by the rapid thrum of wind shaking the reeds. Reed Lawson sat at the kitchen table, Emily Carter's journal open before him, rereading the final pages until the words blurred with exhaustion. Duke lay curled nearby, head resting on his paws, but his ears twitched at every groan of the old house. That tension, the silent storm coiled beneath the dog's fur, told Reed the night was far from over. A sudden sharp howl burst from Duke's throat. He leapt to his feet, claws scraping the floor. Reed shot up from his chair just as Duke bolted toward the front door, barking with fierce, desperate urgency. That was when Reed saw it through the window, a flicker of yellow dancing in the marsh. Not lantern-shaped at first, more like a pulse of trembling flame weaving between the cattails. Reed's breath hitched. "The lantern," he whispered. Duke rammed the door with his shoulder. Reed yanked it open. Cold air slapped his face. The marsh stretched out ahead, damp, shimmering with mist, when suddenly the flicker solidified. A lantern, an old miner's lantern, brass and battered, its glass stained with years of smoke, and the man carrying it stepped forward into view. He was thin, painfully so, with hunched shoulders beneath a torn flannel jacket. His face was narrow, gaunt, the cheeks sunken. A patchy gray beard clung to his chin like tangled wire. His hair, long and matted, clung to his forehead in greasy streaks. But it was his eyes that halted Reed's breath, pale, clouded with the murky look of someone who had drifted too far from sanity. He clutched the lantern close to his chest as if guarding the last ember of his mind. Duke growled, low and warning. The man's lips trembled. For a moment his gaze fixed on Reed, then on Duke, before he spun and fled into the trees with a speed shockingly swift for someone so fragile. Reed barely had time to shout before Duke lunged after him. "Duke, heel!" But Duke's instincts were older and sharper than commands. Reed sprinted after them, stumbling through reeds slick with dew, heart pounding against his ribs. Lantern light bobbed between the trees, then vanished. Duke barked once, sharply, but by the time Reed reached him, the marsh swallowed all trace of the man. Only the trampled reeds remained, a fragile footprint of fear. Duke sniffed wildly, then whimpered, pacing in agitated circles. Reed knelt to steady him. "It's all right, boy. We'll figure this out." But in truth, Reed felt a chill settle inside him. The man wasn't a ghost. He wasn't a legend. He was real. By morning, sunlight filtered through low fog like candlelight through thin cloth. Reed drove straight to the Cedar Glen Police Department. The small department was housed in a red brick building with peeling paint and a crooked flagpole. Inside, he spoke with Deputy Alan Griggs, a stocky man in his late 40s with a broad frame and a weather-beaten face. His beard was a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, peppered with gray, and his brown eyes held the tired patience of someone who had seen more domestic disputes and bar fights than true mysteries. Griggs listened quietly as Reed described the night. Tall, thin, maybe mid-60s, Reed said. Old lantern. Looked confused, frightened. Griggs sighed. We've had reports over the years. A drifter seen near the marsh. Folks call him Marsh Ghost. Never caught him. He's not a ghost, Reed insisted. He's flesh and blood. Griggs nodded, though his expression carried doubt. We'll send someone out to look, but that marsh swallows footprints like they never existed. Reed left feeling hollow, as if the truth were a door drifting further from reach. He returned to Hollow Reed Marsh, needing answers. Helen Brooks appeared on her porch the moment he parked at the old house. She wore a long oatmeal-colored coat over a soft cream blue dress. Her silver hair was braided back loosely, making her delicate features appear sharper in the morning light. Her gaze held a mix of determination and fragile sorrow. I heard Duke last night, she said before Reed spoke. Something happened. Reed recounted everything. The lantern, the man's gaunt face, the chase through the trees. Helen listened in rigid silence, hands clasped tightly. When he finished, she exhaled shakily. Reed, there's something I never told you. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Emily Carter didn't just disappear. She ran. Reed frowned. From what? Helen hesitated. Then the truth came out in a quiet, cracking whisper. From her husband. Reed froze. Helen's face softened into grief as she continued. His name was Randall Carter. He wasn't always cruel. People say he changed after an accident at a construction site years ago. A head injury. Doctors said his memory would fragment, that he had struggled to understand reality. But the town whispered something darker, that the injury woke a kind of rage in him. Helen's eyes glistened. Emily tried to hide it. She wore long sleeves even in summer. She kept to herself. I didn't push. Maybe I should have. Reed's stomach twisted. And the lantern? Helen nodded, tears threatening. Randall carried an old mining lantern from his father. Emily once told me the light calmed him on bad nights. After she vanished, people saw a lantern wandering the marsh. I think he never stopped looking for her. You're saying the man I saw is Randall Carter? Or what's left of him, Helen whispered. He's been out there for years, lost, obsessed, dangerous. The weight of it settled over Reed. Emily hadn't been hiding from a stranger. She'd been hiding from her own husband. And the man Helen described, broken, relentless, was still searching. Reed closed his eyes. She said in her journal she stayed to protect her son. She didn't want Randall to find him. Helen's voice softened to a breath. Then maybe Emily is still here. Maybe she never left the marsh. The possibility hit Reed like a gasp of air after drowning. Startling, impossible, hopeful. If she's out here, he murmured, we have to find her. Helen nodded. I'll go with you. Her words carried gentle strength. They set off along the narrow path skirting the marsh. Duke walked ahead, alert, nose dipping into the wind. As Reed and Helen walked side by side, something subtle warmed the space between them. For years, Reed had lived behind quiet walls, after the divorce, after losing pieces of his confidence little by little. Helen, left widowed a decade earlier, carried her own quiet ache. On that trail, both aches softened. Helen told him how she met her late husband at a veterans fundraiser, how he taught her to grow tomatoes in poor soil, how grief made her retreat from the world. Reed shared how real estate gave him purpose when everything else seemed to slip away. They exchanged shy glances between stories, small smiles that felt like the first light after a storm. Not rushed, not bold, just two people walking through trembling reeds, slowly remembering what warmth felt like. Duke barked once, sharply. He halted, staring into a thicket where the marsh grew darker. Reed tightened his grip on the flashlight. Something cracked in the underbrush. Reed and Helen froze. Duke growled, stepping forward, and then, deep within the reeds, a faint voice drifted out. A woman's voice, fragile, trembling, whispering just one word, "Help!" Reed's heart slammed against his ribs. Helen clutched his arm. Duke braced himself, muscles taut. The reeds parted. Something, or someone, moved. Dawn crept gently over Hollow Reed Marsh, brushing pale gold across the reeds, as if trying to soften the terror of the previous night. Reed Lawson stood still for a long moment, listening. The marsh was too quiet, no bird song, no wind through cattails, only the faint, rhythmic breathing of Duke at his side. The German shepherd stood poised like a sentinel, muscles trembling with instinct, his amber eyes locked toward the deeper marsh, where the reeds thickened into a maze. Reed exchanged a look with Helen Brooks, who stood only a few feet away. She wore a long gray-green coat cinched at the waist, and her silver braid lay over her shoulder. Though exhaustion lined her warm hazel eyes, her posture remained steady. "He's ready," she whispered. "Duke knows where to go." Reed placed a hand on Duke's back. "Find her, boy." Duke lowered his head to the ground and inhaled deeply. Then, just like that, he lunged forward, weaving into the marsh with a speed that surprised them both. Reed and Helen rushed after him, fighting through tangled reeds, damp soil, and the faint scent of decaying vegetation. Duke's barks echoed ahead, sharp, urgent, guiding. The deeper they went, the heavier the air felt. The sun struggled to break through the canopy of tall reeds, casting shifting patterns that made Reed feel as though the marsh itself was breathing around them. After nearly an hour, Duke halted suddenly. Reed's breath caught when he saw what the dog had led them to. Before them lay a collapsed section of earth. Mud and rotten wood revealed the entrance to yet another hidden burrow, larger, darker than the earlier tunnel, its mouth shaped like something clawed its way out. A faint metallic smell drifted out, a scent of stale water and iron. Helen gasped softly. She might be inside. Duke barked sharply, tail raised, then crawled through the gap without waiting. Reed swallowed hard. "Stay behind me," he told Helen. He entered the darkness. The tunnel stretched far beneath the marsh, supported by old planks hammered into place by desperate hands. Reed crawled through, flashlight beam bouncing against the narrow walls. Helen followed, breath trembling but determined. Duke's barks echoed ahead, a steady rhythm guiding them deeper until the tunnel widened. Then Reed saw her. Emily Carter sat slumped against the far wall of a small, dim chamber. Her hair, once described in old photographs as chestnut, had faded to a tangled silver brown that fell over a thin, hollow face. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, with deep-set lines tracing years of fear. She wore a heavy flannel shirt several sizes too big, sleeves torn, collar frayed. Her wrists were thin, trembling as she tried to shield her eyes from Reed's flashlight. But her gaze, dark, sharp, filled with stubborn fire, held more strength than her frail body suggested. "Emily," Reed whispered. Emily blinked, squinting, her voice cracking from disuse. Who are you?" Reed knelt beside her. "My name is Reed Lawson. We're here to bring you home." Duke pressed gently against her knee, whining softly. Emily's expression softened for a moment as she touched his head with a shaking hand. "You found me. You sweet, brave boy." Helen stepped forward, tears shining. "Emily, dear God, how long have you been here?" Emily coughed, voice raw. "Too long. I stayed hidden because he kept looking. Always looking. Every night I heard his lantern scraping through the reeds." Reed swallowed, tension tightening his jaw. "We saw him. Randall. He's alive, still wandering." Emily closed her eyes, shoulders trembling. "I knew he wouldn't stop." Suddenly Duke growled, a low thunderous sound. Reed swung the flashlight toward the tunnel entrance. A shadow moved, then another. Reed's heart froze. Randall Carter stumbled into the chamber, illuminated by the weak glow of his dented yellow mining lantern. He was taller than Reed remembered, gaunt yet towering, his long limbs twitching. His face was a map of confusion and ruin, sunken cheeks, gray tangled beard, pale clouded eyes that flicked wildly between Reed, Helen, and Emily. "Emily!" His voice was hoarse, shredded from years of shouting into empty marshes. "I heard you!" Emily recoiled instantly, fear gripping her features. "Stay back, Randall." Randall staggered forward, lantern shaking. "I've been looking. You left. You hid." Reed stepped between them, raising his hands. "Randall, stop. She's safe now." Randall's gaze snapped toward Reed. For a split second, something human flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, confusion, perhaps sorrow. Then it vanished. He lunged. Duke snarled and leapt, positioning himself between Reed and the staggering man. Randall froze, startled by Duke's ferocity. "Dog," he muttered. "Bad dog, bad." Duke didn't attack. He held his ground, every muscle ready. Suddenly, voices echoed from the tunnel. "Cedar Glen Police, stay where you are." Deputy Alan Griggs crawled into view, flashlight raised. Behind him came Officer Beth Ramirez, a woman in her early 30s with strong shoulders, short auburn hair, and sharp brown eyes full of authority. In one smooth motion, she guided Randall backward with calm, firm commands. "Sir, we're here to help. Put the lantern down." Randall trembled, then collapsed into Griggs's arms, sobbing like a broken child. "I wanted her home. I just wanted her home." As officers escorted him out, Emily buried her face in her hands. Helen held her tightly. Reed placed a steadying hand on Duke, who finally relaxed, though his breath still came in tense bursts. Emily whispered through tears, "I stayed to protect my boy. I stayed because no one else could hear me. Only the dog. Only the faithful ones here." Reed swallowed emotion. "You're safe now. We'll get you back to town." And they did. Months passed. Emily Carter recovered under the gentle care of Cedar Glen's community. Her son, now a grown man, returned to reunite with her. Randall entered long-term psychiatric treatment, finally receiving help that should have come decades earlier. Reed finalized the sale of the old house, earning enough to rebuild his life with long-forgotten stability. And he wasn't alone anymore. Every evening, Reed and Helen walked side by side along the Marsh Trail, their hands brushing, their laughter quiet but warm, two lonely souls slowly stitching themselves together. Duke trotted proudly ahead, now celebrated as the town's hero. Children ran to him whenever he passed, stuffing biscuits and treats into his eager mouth as if feeding a small legend. One late afternoon, beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak, Reed took Helen's hand fully. No hesitation, no fear. She squeezed back, her smile soft and sure. Duke lay near their feet, eyes half closed in contentment. From the porch of her new home, Emily watched them and smiled, a gentle, peaceful smile of someone finally free. The marsh glowed gold beneath the setting sun, and for the first time in decades, Hollow Reed Marsh felt like a place of healing, not hiding. And there, surrounded by quiet love and loyal companionship, their new chapter began, steady, warm, and full of long-awaited peace. In the quiet hush of Cedar Glen, long after the marsh winds settled, one truth shimmered above all the fear, all the shadows, all the years of wandering. Sometimes God works his miracles through the loyal, the gentle, and the unexpected. Emily was found not by chance, not by luck, but by a dog whose heart seemed to hear a prayer whispered decades earlier. Reed and Helen, two souls worn by life, found comfort, companionship, and a new beginning in the very place others feared to step into. In our own lives, each of us walks through seasons of loneliness, confusion, or doubt. But stories like this remind us that God's grace often arrives quietly, through the kindness of a stranger, the courage of a loyal companion, or the small nudge that tells us to keep going one more day. His miracles rarely shout. Most of them whisper, yet they change everything. So, may you, wherever you are this evening, feel that same gentle whisper, reminding you that you are seen, you are loved, and you are never walking alone. And may God bless your home with peace, protection, and the kind of hope that lights a path even through the deepest marsh.